Product provided by THQ Nordic. Thank you all for coming in today. He moved us to tears. He was our soul, our passion, our inspiration, a shining star in the night sky. Let's all hold hands and mourn the passing of fake Mr. Krabs.
SpongeBob, this flapping robot crisis is making the
Shine on, you absolute legend. This is a statement that I've heard across many a video here, but I miss the mid-tier game. Much like other entertainment industries, the movies in particular, we don't have a lot of games that are mediums anymore. You got smalls and larges, but no mediums. You know, the games that are bigger than indies, but not AAA, AA you might call it. I've seen that thrown around. Licensed games typically fell into this category. You know, your movie games, your games based on cartoons. The AA moniker, at least when it came to console releases. Some would cross over into the big blockbuster category, particularly if your source material involved Peter Jackson, but these were the games that were maybe not quite full price, maybe didn't last longer than 10 hours, but were still a fun time. Comfort food for a kid. This is where the SpongeBob games sat. Battle for Bikini Bottom, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Lights, Camera, Pants. These were mid-tier games that weren't trying to blow the gaming world out of the water. That's why I was so delighted when THQ Nordic revived SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom with its Rehydrated edition in 2020. It's a remake, remaster. We're not talking about it. Battle for Bikini Bottom was a great game that, while not making any top 10 lists because of that alleged license stank, had a strong group of fans. And when Rehydrated came out and performed very, very well, where could we go from here? Remastering the pseudo-sequel, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game in the same way? We didn't know until Purple Lamp, the developers of Rehydrated, finally revealed something entirely new. SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake. While I wouldn't have said no to a rehydrated version of the movie game, listen, a brand new SpongeBob game in the style of Battle for Bikini Bottom? Yes, I will take that please and thank you. So here we are, just a little over 2 years after Rehydrated came out, we've got SpongeBob SquarePants, The Cosmic Shake on PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and PC. First impressions? God, this game looks good. Rehydrated was no slouch either, but this straight up looks like a CGI interpretation of SpongeBob. The animation is delightful and varied, and it's just a fun game to look at. So while the looks of the game are markedly improved, what's different? Looking back at the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, it wasn't all that different from Battle for Bikini Bottom. Playable characters SpongeBob and Patrick had basically the same moves, the only real difference is the levels were a bit more linear and a little less open. You could apply the if it ain't broke, don't fix it excuse, but nothing was expanded on all that much. Though keep in mind this came out only a year after the previous game. With the Cosmic Shake, Purple Lamp has greatly expanded on how SpongeBob controls. Unfortunately, he's the only playable character with Patrick and Sandy removed, more on them in a bit. But SpongeBob as a platformer game character is just a delight to control here. He has his basic moveset from Battle here too. However, instead of being entirely bubble-based, he's been streamlined to more straightforward actions that move a bit quicker. He's still got his basic bubble one attack, sure, but now he just has a simple butt slam as a ground pound move without the bubble feet. Also, his aerial bubble headbutt move has been removed entirely, though it's not really missed. You start out the game with these basic moves and it all works just fine. Speaking of the start, the story. Listen, gotta be honest, the original story on Battle for Bikini Bottom really is a big ball of nothing. Robots attack Bikini Bottom. That's it. However, the basic premise wasn't the star there, it was merely an excuse for gameplay and to just showcase SpongeBob's world in an interactive form with constant jokes and visual gags. Basic story, yes, but by design. It was a joke vehicle more than anything. Cosmic Shake, shakes things up a bit, I won't apologize, with a bit more of a story focus. SpongeBob and Patrick head off on a best buddies trip to the local amusement park, Glove World. You know, with that really intense roller coaster everyone's really scared of. There they meet fortune teller Madame Cassandra, who sells them what she calls mystical bubble soap that can make dreams come true. The duo head home and really just go for it with bubble blowing, making wish bubbles for all of their friends and Squidward. They soon realize, however, that the bubble soap is a bit dangerous. It's property of King Neptune, and naturally, mere mortals aren't supposed to use it. All hell breaks loose, of course, as the wish bubbles begin popping, creating wild purple portals that suck in Bikini Bottom's residents and buildings into them. With the town and its citizens completely in disarray, it's up to SpongeBob and Patrick, who is now wish transformed into a balloon version of himself, to float along and help SpongeBob on the adventure.
If I were a balloon, I'd be able to do cool stuff like this! And this! And this!
With the suspicious help of Madame Cassandra to enter the wish portals and save their friends, setting everything right. So yeah, a bit more plot heavy than previous SpongeBob games. However, it's not really all that complicated. It's really just an excuse to go into areas of Bikini Bottom completely reimagined into new wild lands, such as prehistoric kelp forest, pirate goo lagoon, and Wild West jellyfish fields, to name a few. We even get some new never explored in a game areas like the sulfur fields.
Come on! He could be anywhere in these sulfur fields!
Hey, SpongeBob!
Here reimagined into a medieval setting. Along with Bikini Bottom itself as a hub, Cosmic Shake has just 7 levels, but don't fret, they're definitely larger, more expansive experiences than what we had in previous SpongeBob games. Each one feels a bit different, with early locations being more linear as they ease players into how the game plays, with the later levels becoming more sandboxy and free to explore with multiple paths for players to take. Personally, I would have preferred every level to be more of that open sandbox type. The exploration here is a lot of fun, just to see what weird reimagined SpongeBob thing is around the corner, from bizarre movie sets littered with hiding paparazzi to a darkly lit rock bottom neighborhood set up for trick-or-treaters featuring multiple levels of weirdly shaped houses, making for a delightful platforming challenge. These reimagined locations are a treat, and there really wasn't a sour one in the bunch for me, at least when it came to visual design. Where Cosmic Shake falters a bit is in its gameplay design. Battle for Bikini Bottom took the Super Mario 64 approach, with each level having multiple objectives to accomplish along with the main goal. For example, in Jellyfish Fields in the original game, you had to get to the end, defeat the King Jellyfish, and get some jellyfish jelly for Squidward. For that, you'd be rewarded with the main collectible of the game, a golden spatula. Along the way, however, you'd earn spatulas for completing various other tasks like getting through certain sections, doing a small favor for an NPC, things like that. Through this, players were always earning golden spatulas or finding other collectibles like Patrick's socks, so easily every 10 minutes some kind of goal was accomplished. It was a satisfying gameplay loop that really helped towards a constant sense of victory, even if you only had time to play the game for 30 minutes or so. With the Cosmic Shake, however, the goal of each level simply becomes find SpongeBob's friend and save them. There's still some collectibles to be sure, but everything unlocks solely through level completion. The only real collectible is Cosmic Jelly, replacing the delightful game-satirizing shiny objects of Battle for Bikini Bottom. Because of this, levels don't have that same sense of constant accomplishment, primarily in the early, more linear levels. They're super fun to play through, to be clear, but with the levels way bigger than they were in previous games, they feel a bit empty as a result. There's still tikis to break and platforms to jump on, but when there isn't that constant feeling of progression to various goals, things can kind of drag a bit. It's a shame too, because the levels themselves are so varied and fun. A more collectathon approach to its gameplay design would have worked really, really well, in my opinion. Same with level progression, whereas previously you'd have to have a certain amount of golden spatulas to unlock levels, and were free to complete them in whatever order you choose if you had multiple available at once. Here you finish a level and then boom, another one unlocks. It's just a bit less exciting than before. Not the worst thing in the world, mind you, but if I had to choose, I would greatly prefer the more open structure of Battle for Bikini Bottom. Now to get back to how SpongeBob controls. He's, again, just great. It's a shame that he's the only playable character here, but Purple Lamp here has done an amazing job of making SpongeBob way more versatile in his platforming moveset. From the outset, he has 2 new abilities from the beginning, a new dodge button and a glide with the
Rusty Cray, pizza!
I love the dodge. The dodge is my friend. It makes for more fluid movement in combat encounters and just feels great to use, eliminating any awkward stiffness while attempting to jump away when trying to dodge enemies. The glide? It's fine. You can't really travel all that far horizontally with it. It's no paraglider in Sly Cooper or Breath of the Wild, and it really descends pretty rapidly. So in the end, it really just feels like a way to correct a bad jump more than anything. I think the game would have benefited from cutting it completely, honestly. Make it so we really have to rely on our other platforming skills. As you progress through the game, like in Battle for Bikini Bottom, you gain new abilities as well. However, whereas in that game they were mainly used as ways to combat new enemy types and deal with situational puzzles, the new additions in Cosmic Shake really enhance the gameplay, making SpongeBob even more of a joy to play. There's the Karate Kick that allows SpongeBob to zoom across the screen into specific platformer obstacles while also allowing him to hop through the air to fight enemies without ever touching the ground. It's extraordinarily satisfying to control, and it's especially delightful to use against mobs of enemies, just as long as you keep them on screen. You can't lock onto them if you can't see them, right? Beyond that, the Bubble Bowl and the Cruise Bubble are combined together to a more straightforward bubble throw. You even use it while moving, and it's mostly made for hitting buttons and crowd control with enemies. Capture one in a bubble and you don't have to worry about it for a moment. These new abilities come together to make SpongeBob genuinely one of my favorite characters to control in a platformer. He's not perfect, the glide is superfluous, and the bubble throw can only be used once the previous bubble has popped, a bit of a nuisance when you have a badly placed throw that seems to go on forever, but the changes and enhancements make him a much more fluid controlling character that just feels good, including small quality of life improvements like a faster ledge grab in case you just missed that one jump. With SpongeBob being the only playable character and Sandy and Patrick eliminated, some of their moves are incorporated into SpongeBob's from battle. Carrying and throwing objects as Patrick is completely ditched, but Sandy's lasso swing is brought back to allow SpongeBob to swing from, well, less Texas-looking hook points. It still suffers from a problem I had with Rehydrated, however. It's all a bit too snappy and fast, making the swinging feel a bit stiff and unnatural to control. A little more relaxed, momentum-based swing would have been beneficial here, much like the original Battle for Bikini Bottom. The sliding also returns, though in my opinion there's not nearly enough. Yes, I'm biased, I adore the sliding, and we do get some pretty good sequences here, but still, more. Instead, with new traversal techniques, we get some on-rail seahorse riding sequences which are fine but not that exciting, especially when this paper cutout of Miss Puff is screaming at you half the time.
Look out! Jump! Big jump! Keep on sliding!
There's also this bubble surfboard too. It doesn't last that long and it's only usable in certain situations where the item appears, but it's fine. It's fine. Just not particularly interesting. What is really interesting to me though is that they cut out so many collectibles from the game. Not that Battle for Bikini Bottom had all that much. There were the shiny objects, Patrick socks, and the golden spatulas. It was never a case of collectible overload like other platformers could have. I just really think that Cosmic Shake would have benefited more structurally to have something like the spatulas as a constant goal as opposed to the more mission-based structure here. There are other collectibles in Cosmic Shake beyond the Cosmic Jelly, but they're all specific to these side missions you receive from characters in Bikini Bottom after certain levels, like finding ingredients for a potion to turn a character back to normal, for example. These don't prove all that interesting, however, as they boil down to just running around a level you've already been to and just searching every corner for these items that have now spawned into the environment. Again, the mission structure I think really does a disservice to the game overall. It's not the worst thing, truly, but I just think it would work better more in the classic style of battle employed. There's a case to be made for more modernization in the platformer genre, that's valid, and the reason why it kind of died out for a good bit after the 6th generation consoles like the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. But sometimes these older styles of design just work, in my opinion. Maybe it's my nostalgia, who knows? But there's a reason why so many people celebrated when Rehydrated came out. Not only was it a beloved game, but it was also so exciting to see a platformer in its style return in some form, especially after other remakes like the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy and the Spyro Reignited trilogy. Really though, I just dig the visual improvements Purple Lamp has made since Rehydrated. The Cosmic Shake, like I said a bit earlier, is utterly gorgeous. The copy provided to me by THQ Nordic, thanks again by the way, was for PC through Steam, so while I can't speak to the console versions coming out on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch, what we have here is just delightful. It really looks like the show is fully realized in CGI form, and the animation work in gameplay and cutscenes is just stellar. I mean, look at it.
Prepare to be scared with the haunting memory of me ghostly ghost. Oh, who am I kidding?
Actually, we came in through the roof.
Is that right? Well, you'll be leaving through the floor, 'cause I'm in a mood, and my mood is karate!
Nothing looks off and everyone sounds great. Yes, tragically, fake Mr. Krabs is gone and Clancy Brown is rightfully back in the role, but you know what? That weird voice will be missed. So long, you beautiful, strained, vocal fried crustacean. The pause screen and UI even have a lot of personality, really leaning on that gooey cosmic jelly motif everywhere that's fun, not too gross, and very SpongeBob. NPCs are a lot more vocal too, with you able to talk to characters and hear them chatter as you go by. And you know, hit them. Ouch! Because why not? Oh hey, an achievement! Visually, the only thing that misses the mark a bit is the connective tissue of, well, everything. This was a problem Rehydrated had too. There's some abrupt visual cuts with cutscenes and loading that just feels off, weird, and in some parts unfinished. Like combat. Instead of robots this time around, we've got these cosmic jelly monsters. There's some repeats in enemies that behave similarly to the robots, along with new multi-hit enemies that do things from swinging jelly balls at you, spawning other enemies while sending shockwaves around the environment, and bathtubs. Just bathtubs. These guys are fun the first few times until they get a bit tedious once you know how to deal with their limited variety of attacks. Enemies generally pop up wherever, even in the hub, but there are some specific encounters that lock you into the area, and the only way out is to take out every enemy that spawns in. The arena lock-in is visually conveyed by this big jelly swirl that awkwardly pops in when these challenges happen, and again just pops out when they're done. Some kind of animation of the jelly swirling up from the ground and maybe down out of the air would have been nice. It could look very cool, be a bit dramatic, and make these combat encounters feel less jarring when they appear. As it is, it just feels a little unfinished, like some kind of animation was just forgotten about because of time and/or budget. Same goes for some really cute visual gags that don't quite hit the mark in the way I think the developers intended. If you've ever watched SpongeBob the show, you know a hallmark of the visuals involves these goofy, sometimes gross, close-up illustrated images to emphasize how a character looks in some kind of joke.
Does this look unsure to you?
No.
Cleverly, the Cosmic Shake also employs this technique, but whereas the show emphasized these close-up portraits with some kind of sting of music, here these images just appear silently with no fanfare, just an abrupt cut.
I will make myself extra picturesque.
Honestly, I still find it funny, just unintentionally so, with how random and sudden they show up on screen.
Those jelly extras were very convincingly beating me up.
It'd be a simple fix to add some kind of noise to these to make them have the impact I think the devs intended. As they are, they're just odd and funny in absolutely the wrong way. Good idea though. Beyond certain weird visual imperfections like this and some jarring transitions, Cosmic Shake really is a great visual achievement in my opinion, and just a fun game in general. It has its quirks and imperfections, and I can't say I like it more than Battle for Bikini Bottom, but I think it serves as a worthwhile new follow-up to that classic. And you know what? It's just nice to see a good licensed game that seems to have more than a shoestring budget. Now, the licensed game isn't dead, even though it's well behind its heyday in the 90s and 2000s. They're still around, mostly from publishers like Outright Games, who have steadily been releasing titles based on properties like My Little Pony, Ben 10, Bratz, the list goes on. With modern gaming, we're even getting games like My Friend Peppa Pig, which sure, of course it's for preschoolers, but it's genuinely charming to see a game look directly like its source material and function just fine. Yes, I played it. From what I've experienced of Outright Games' published output, they're all generally okay, but not more than that. There's some more ambitious titles like Ice Age Scrat's Nutty Adventure, which is a full-on 3D platformer, but a lot of these feel shortchanged in the budget and time department where they start developing interesting ideas, but then the game just kind of, well, ends. I'd love for more licensed games like this to exist, but they really need to be given the chance to really make something substantial. My Little Pony: A Maritime Bay Adventure is a charming adventure platformer for little kids, but it's over in less than 3 hours with a platinum trophy possible, and honestly about the same time if you're playing on PlayStation 4 or 5. I know, these are geared towards a very young audience, but I still wish kids could have a longer experience than something that can be beaten in an afternoon by most people. Peppa Pig notwithstanding, that's clearly built as baby's first game, and it's just fine as it is, but I still wish for something a bit more. That's why I look at the Cosmic Shake so kindly despite some of its issues. It's a licensed game based on a kid's property, but it doesn't treat them like they can't handle a more substantial game. It's not terribly long. I finished it in about 9 hours, and that was admittedly without doing a lot of the side objectives. But what's here feels worth the price, with a lot of care and love put into the animation and environments to make it truly feel like a SpongeBob SquarePants game. Yes, some things stick out as a tad unfinished, but it's clear this game has been allowed the time to be a full gaming experience as opposed to what amounts to a small mini-adventure that might be better off as a cheaply priced downloadable title only. It's an absolute beacon of light other companies and developers should look to onto what makes a good licensed game. A mid-tier game, not something small and indie and not something with PlayStation Studios money, but something perfectly happy in the middle to provide a fun, charming experience that doesn't need insane 4K production values and a deep, heartfelt story. There's a place for that, clearly, but it's nice to just play something well-made and much more low-key, you know? The state of the licensed game isn't a dire one, but it's not great. Licensed games naturally have a bit of a stench on them, being viewed as just a way for companies to make a quick buck off of brand recognition alone, but it's great to see something like the Cosmic Shake show up to prove that, yes, it's easier to sell something with SpongeBob's name on it, but that doesn't mean it can't be ambitious and strive to provide an experience beyond a mediocre 5 out of 10 that lacks the personality and time to really develop any interesting gameplay concepts. I dream of a world filled with cosmic shakes. Just because a game is based on an animated TV show, for example, doesn't mean it has to be doomed to the bargain bin unless given in first-party support like the Insomniac Spider-Man games. Find the right creative team that can really bring a passion to adapting the property, and we could really see some amazing stuff come out. Selfishly, I just want the mid-tier game back, the AA. We need some variety between indie darlings and $70 behemoths. Variety is the word of the day. You can make a non-AAA experience really work with some real love and passion. Like, look at what we got here. We get a medieval level with a flooded castle, mystic forest, a hedge maze full of traps, and that's just one of 7 different locations. It's charming and I'm glad this game exists. And like Battle for Bikini Bottom before it, it truly embraces the property it's based on and runs with it. Like, hey, we get Pearl in this game. She wasn't in the previous ones before. Like, another small collectible are these golden coins which you find off the beaten path and for completing some side challenges. You use these to earn an absolute glut of extra costumes for SpongeBob that range from delightful, referential to, well, I guess we know one character in the show who worked on this game. It's a fun extra, and hey, some are available as pre-order DLC, so maybe there's some downloadable content plans in the future for the Cosmic Shake. I mean, I wouldn't say no to an extra bonus level or super boss. Oh, and speaking of bosses, Cosmic Shake has them. Whereas Battle for Bikini Bottom stuck strictly to robots for its boss encounters, we get a little more visual variety here. Now, I won't show any late game encounters to avoid spoilers, but what we get here is pretty fun and varied. One I would like to spotlight is Sandy herself, squirrel version here, not metallic robot, in the karate downtown Bikini Bottom wish world. We get a fun encounter where she uses her karate abilities to attack you, along with a huge wheel that goes flying at SpongeBob at pretty fast speeds, from rolling to sliding around the arena. With SpongeBob's new moves and mobility, it's a fast-moving, energetic encounter that isn't the easiest to get through for new platformer gamers, and I've really enjoyed it. I was worried there would just be rehashes similar to the robots in Battle for Bikini Bottom, so I was pleasantly surprised to see Purple Lamp go in completely different directions here. My one disappointment honestly comes from the final boss of the game. Now, I won't show you or tell you anything to spoil it, I'm not a monster, maybe, but it's a rather unremarkable encounter that lacks the frenetic pace of fights like Sandy's. Also, the game glitched and there was absolutely zero music playing during it, but hey, that's something that will hopefully be patched in future updates so it won't happen again. Also, some of these tikis just float there when they shouldn't. They're just there.
Menacingly!
Beyond that though, each level ends with some kind of event, be it a boss, a puzzle, a platforming challenge. It's never the same thing twice, and I respect the variety, even if some of these moments don't perfectly hit the mark. The only weird outlier is the Wild West Jellyfish Fields, the first level. They seem to set up an encounter with the Alaskan bullworm from the show, sending you deep into its burrowing caverns and into a large open area that screams boss fight, and then nothing. Just a combat encounter with some of the jelly enemies. A little odd, they seem to really set up a sense of dread, at least a small amount. It's a SpongeBob game, remember? Only for no payoff, and the level just kind of ends on a whimper. Odd. But now I'm getting nitpicky. Like I said, I'm so glad SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake exists. Fans of Battle for Bikini Bottom never thought their beloved game would get the respect it deserves, but look at us now. Not only do we get an HD remake of the original, but now we also have a full-on sequel/spiritual successor. And it's good. A bit rough around the edges, but I really enjoyed my time with it. And really, a lot of my complaints stem from some weird visual issues and aren't game-breaking in the slightest. They can be fixed. This game has personality, a fun story, some memorable enemy encounters, and it's just a fun, breezy time in one of my favorite genres. I really recommend it to anyone who likes a good old platform with some fun characters and, hey, people who miss the licensed games of yesteryear. Listen, I think my personal bias is evident. I just love platformers, and I demand more. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to my top patrons, Jan Willis, Jordan O'Neill, Miss KH Guides, and Oz. And once again, big thanks to THQ Nordic for providing an early code to cover this game. If you enjoyed this video, you can help support me on Patreon, where you get early access to videos such as this one, along with exclusive content released each month. Happy New Year!